Earlier this year, I was doing some deep thinking about the relationship between various art styles, music, painting, writing, and business. I considered all the different art forms we generally think about and why they are thought of as so fundamentally different from business. Business is often looked at as the antithesis of art, something entirely different yet necessary to exploit the art for its monetary value. But in doing so, I realized something pretty interesting. They're actually fundamentally the same thing. What do I mean? What I mean is the details and nuances are different. The mediums of expression are different, but the way they can be thought about, with all their complexities and the patterns that comprise them, is fundamentally the same. I'll give you an example. If you make music, you start with a blank canvas, pure potential, nothing tangible yet. As you start making decisions by picking individual sounds, the building blocks, out of this infinite potential, you begin creating relationships between these sounds, creating patterns. These patterns are purely relational to each other. Without their relational context, there's just noise, chaos, because there's no harmony between the different sounds yet. As you begin creating patterns of sounds, loops, these are then fit into even larger patterns, arranging. You go from having one sound to a bunch of sounds, to a pattern, to a bunch of patterns, and then these patterns give larger structure and identity to their fundamental parts, becoming something larger and more meaningful. A song. You can take it one step further and create a relationship between a bunch of songs, turning it into a mixtape or an album. Now think about writing. You start with a blank page, your potential. You begin picking individual letters, which make up words. Words are patterns of letters. As you start putting words together, they start forming even larger patterns, sentences. As you compile these sentences, you create paragraphs, then pages, and ultimately a complete body, whether it's a script, a novel, a short story, a blog, or whatever. Take it one step further, and you can create a series of books like Harry Potter or Game of Thrones. It's the same creative process as with music, just using a different medium with different fundamental parts. Instead of sounds, vibrations, we use letters. The same applies to film, which is a bit higher level because it includes music and writing and visual elements, which are obviously each composed of their own smaller fundamental pieces. And when I say smaller, I don't mean less significant. I'm just talking in a relational way so you can understand how these parts come together into a singular, more meaningful idea. The perspective from which you are looking at something, with your unique information, biases, and experiences, determine whether something is meaningful to you or not. Shifting your perspective shifts the meaning of the pieces because their relational context shifts, which can turn something meaningless into meaningful and something meaningful into meaningless. It doesn't matter what your life looks like because it's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see. That's what determines whether it's meaningful or meaningless. In a world that's rapidly changing, constantly re-examining and recompartmentalizing the relational context of information has helped me shift my perspective whenever I feel stuck. I believe the reason it works so well is because it allows me to understand something from many different perspectives, which not only serves me well as an artist, let's look at how this applies to business. We've all heard the cliche quote, business is all about relationships. Let's peel that back a little bit. We have a bunch of fundamental parts, people that come together to form patterns, departments, or networks, which allow an overall structure, business, to exist and function. A hierarchy must be conceptualized if we want any hope of being able to define and communicate what the business means. The way we define what it means is by considering the relationships between the fundamental parts it's made up of. In the dominoes up the block example, we can start with the bigger chunks of patterns in the hierarchy, departments, let's say, and break those down into their fundamental roles and functions. For example, the delivery department might have 5 drivers. The cooking department might have 2 pizza makers. Fundamental pieces, the individual people, make up the larger patterns, the departments, which make up the overall structure of the business. Then, at the top is the owner, who oversees the broader operations and makes sure the departments are properly managing their fundamental parts, staff, inventory, equipment, maintenance, etc. As a disclaimer, I don't know what the fuck Domino's actual business model is. Whatever it is, it clearly works. I'm just giving an example of deconstructing a larger idea, business, down into its smaller parts. The same way we deconstruct a song all the way down to sounds, or a movie, anything down to its fundamental parts. Instead of compiling letters and sounds or colors like an artist might do, the business person creates relationships between people, ideas, problems, and skill sets. The entrepreneur is an artist. The artist is an entrepreneur. The parallels are endless. It just depends on how you look at what they are doing. So whatever you see in the people, places, and things around you, look for the beauty in it, even if it means shifting your perspective. And if you can't see the beauty, do your best to create it, because we all have a different toolkit, different fundamental parts, path, and purpose, but it's the relationship between these things that make life meaningful. Thank you. If you found this video meaningful in some way, please let me know in the comments what it means to you. Catch you guys in the next one.